What is up, guys? My name is Lorenzo Antigua. I'd like to thank you all for visiting the channel today, and I'd like today to talk about the 5 things that I wish I learned when I was first starting as a guitar player. Before I get started, I'd like to say I would really appreciate it if you guys like the video, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. It really helps me out, and it will help me to continue making, guitar content for you guys. So the first thing that I think is really important and that a lot of guitar players don't stress when they're learning, just starting out, is noticing your body. A lot of times when we're playing, we have a lot of tension that gets in the way of what we're doing. For example, if we're playing a lot of these like bar chord shapes that a lot of us learn in the beginning, right? Those shapes are super useful. We use them all the time. We can move them all around the neck, right? But the difference between those and our normal like open chord shapes is that I feel like we can't necessarily use them for the same amount of time. The open chord shapes are really easy to finger, but the bar chord shapes, if we're playing a little too hard, our hands can get kind of tense. I noticed that when I was first started playing, my hand would always start cramping up after I would play, whatever, a practice session, a couple songs at church, whatever. It would just feel like I'm doing a lot of work, and it didn't necessarily make anything sound better when I was like really pressing hard. So one thing to think about is just kind of lightening up our touch a little bit, especially on like electric guitars. This is a arch top guitar, so it's a little bit more string tension, but like trying to find, okay, the strings aren't ringing out. Some of the strings are ringing out. Even just with little bits of adjustment on the pressure, finding where we're doing the least amount of work for the most result is really helpful. Another place that we, tend to have tension is just like other places in our body. For example, I noticed that when I was doing picking exercises, my right shoulder would kind of tense up a little bit. And those things don't seem like they really go a long way, but they actually build up a lot of, unnecessary tension that hinders our speed. And a lot of us as guitar players, especially if we're trying to solo fast, we need to be more relaxed in order to, continue building up speed, endurance, play those really fast bebop lines if you're into jazz, or even like metal guys that are shredding. Those guys are, they're relaxed. They're playing stuff, and they're not having any extra tension in their bodies. Try to think about noticing your body, finding the places where there's a little bit of unnecessary tension. Stop playing and say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling a little tension in my shoulder. Let me try to relax that a little bit. Or I'm feeling a little tension in my left hand. Let me try to relax it a little bit. And just try to ease into whatever you're playing. So the second thing that I wish, and this one's a big one, that I wish I would have learned when I started is playing less. A lot of times I would be playing progressions like, just 1, 4, 5 in C major, C, A minor, D minor, G. And I would just be doing a lot in terms of like... That sounds fine, but when you're playing with the whole rhythm section, or like, a drummer, bass player, keyboard player, a lot of the times those big chords were getting in my way, and those comping styles could get in the way. Sometimes it's just better to be like... And that's something that I'm still learning how to do. I'm learning all my triad shapes on the guitar so I can, even play less notes. And sometimes those big chords, those bass notes, will get in the way of the bass player. So another thing that we can try to do when we're talking about playing less is playing maybe the triad shapes on the top 3 strings. So for example, these are the same chords: C major, A minor, D minor, G major. And that type of stuff, it can sound actually better when you're playing with other people. Now, when we're playing like, covers and stuff like that, of course, like maybe we would want to have our bass notes in the chords so that we can, sound a little bit more full, accompany ourselves, maybe a guitar and a singer. But try to think about leaving space for other people to do things when we're comping or when we're playing with other people. Another really important thing when we talk about playing less is also in our single note, soloing, right? A lot of us, I'm going to go back to a simple shape that a lot of us know, A minor pentatonic box. A lot of us know that shape. We learn it you know, most guitar players learn that as their first scale. And it's fun. Like, you can play over a blues and, you know, you can just rip up and down the scale, right? Sometimes if we're playing through a backing track and we're just playing whatever, you know, I messed up there, but, you know, we're playing whatever scale shapes, it doesn't sound good. But if we can think of, like, ideas in those scales that are, like, maybe less notes, maybe constraining ourselves to the top 2 strings. And I added a little note there, but, like, we're trying to think of musical ideas with the instrument. And that's something I'm, you know, still working on. I'm a student of this instrument, but it's a good thing to try to limit ourselves and say, let me step back from the scale shapes and try to make some more musical phrases. The third thing that I wish someone would have told me when I started playing is to kind of figure out the difference between practicing and having fun on the guitar. So a lot of the times, you know, it's really fun to just kind of like, you know, just like noodle on the guitar and not really, you know, aimlessly do things like play some chords that we like and just kind of do that for like a long time. But we have to ask ourselves what our goals are on the instrument, I think, sometimes. Me personally, I have goals to be a professional musician, let's say. There's some work that has to go into that, you know, taking music aside. In order to learn how to be a doctor, you have to, you know, go to the books, study, then go to school, and then do all this stuff. You don't necessarily have to do all that when you're playing an instrument per se. It's helpful, but, you know, everyone has their own path. But, you know, if you want to do this for real, there has to be some working on, you know, learning chord harmony, scales, figuring out how to solo effectively or differently over certain things, like placing harmonic ideas on top of one. All this type of stuff is stuff that you need to practice. You might have a really good ear and be able to hear those things, but even those who don't know that much theory still practice ideas and practical things so that when they get up on stage and they play on the bandstand, it's just there. It's already in their fingers. It's already in their minds. This is not necessarily to say that it's bad to say that maybe my goals are just to have fun on the instrument. Maybe I just want to play along to my favorite songs. In that case, that's awesome. As a matter of fact, I commend most players that do that. It's just, I think it's important for us to realize that, to acknowledge where we want to be with our guitar playing. Number 4 is one that I can tell you all that I'm a bit of a hypocrite at, and that is that gear is not everything. With an asterisk, it's kind of not everything. You know, as guitar players, in the beginning, we buy our first guitars, and some of us are, like, content with that when we're, like, playing or whatever, and then we start going on YouTube, maybe, or we have other friends that play, and we see their instruments, and we think, oh, if only. If only I could have this guitar, or this pedal, or this amp, I would be set. I would be a much better player than I am, and I would be in a really good spot to do what I gotta do, right? Now, sometimes there's gear that can give you a sound that you just might not be able to get. There are certain things that an acoustic guitar can do that an electric can't do, and vice versa. You know, those are things that I would say are reasonable to say, okay, I need a piece of gear. But a lot of the times with guitar players with GAS, gear acquisition syndrome, we just want the next piece of gear, and that's totally fine. But just realize that that next piece of gear is not going to be a substitute for practicing. If you have maybe like a poorer quality guitar, let's say, whatever that means, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you buy like a $2,000 Fender Stratocaster, you're going to be a better player. It's all about the practice that goes into the instrument. It's all in the hands. It really is. And I learned that a lot, you know, from different people, teachers that I've had, mentors. You can have all the gear in the world, but it doesn't make you a better guitar player. And finally, tip number 5, the last thing that I wish somebody would have taught me when I was playing guitar is to, you know, stop playing so many exercises and learn songs. This is another recent revelation, if I'm being honest. I learned how to play so many different, like, you know, exercises, like some of these like diatonic chord progressions, like that type of stuff, like those, like whatever, adding like major 7th chords and all that stuff, right? I've been trying to figure out, you know, minor 2 5s. I'm playing the examples in C minor because it's like a pretty, you know, all-around key that a lot of us can get behind. The other day I kind of realized that I didn't know any songs. In my case, I was, pretty illiterate when it came to knowing jazz standards. I only knew about like 2 songs, and that's because my teacher had been like working on them with me, and we've been working on them for a couple semesters now. Right now I just kind of want to learn songs that I like. For example, Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder. I learned this yesterday just listening to the album. And I'm learning, the riffs and stuff like that. But this is the type of stuff that brought me to the guitar. I wanted to learn all these songs that, made me want to play the instrument. I kind of forgot about that when I had learned the open chords, and I got tired of that, and I wanted to learn more, expansive harmony. And then I just kind of was learning a lot of harmony and chords without applying them to songs. It's really important to do that. It's really important for us to say, hey, listen, I like that song. Let me learn how to play it. Alright guys, thank you so much. That is the end of the video. I really appreciate you guys who stuck around and watched through the whole thing. I'd like to say that this is my first, video on this channel, and it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I want to continue and help grow. One of my big goals for this channel is to kind of like document my journey through the guitar. I only started about 5 years ago, and if I'm being honest, I only started studying seriously about 3 years ago. So I'm a fairly green student to the instrument. A lot of these cats are starting when they're like 6 years old or whatever, but I'm happy with my progress, and I'm really hoping that you guys will stick around and be with me as I go on to wherever the next level is in my guitar playing. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please, again, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and comment and let me know what you guys would like to see, what kind of videos you would want, maybe lessons, tutorials, covers of songs. I'm open to all that, and I'm open to suggestions in the description below. So thank you so much, guys, and have a good one.